Creature Shock was made in 1994 by Argonaut software for IBM compatibles and the 3DO. The game was later ported to other systems, among which was the Philips CDI. This is the version I will cover in the current episode. It was released in 1997 and can be played in a Nintendo Wii-like motion control manner, using the Peacekeeper revolver and its air mouse feature. The game is a first-person puzzle adventure similar to Myst, D or Enemy Zero. Similarly to those games, it heavily relies on pre-rendered assets, but goes a step further and makes use of full-motion video, over which it lays gameplay elements. Compared to the classics of the genre, the game's focus is put much more on shooting rather than on actual puzzles. The riddles in Creature Shock are mostly finding ways through convoluted mazes and figuring out weak spots of enemies. No in-game map is available, and part of the fun is to draw an own map on paper based on the gained experience and compass readings. The game takes place in the future. Overpopulation led humanity to explore space to found colonies. One of the survey ships is attacked and consumed by a living asteroid. The game's main protagonist, Jason Barr, is sent out to explore the situation. Arrived, Barr fights his way to an alien who can morph its shape to resemble one of the scientists of the survey ship. The alien is captured and interrogated. Information on an alien communication station is yielded, which Barr is sent out to destroy. After succeeding doing so, Barr travels along a tractor beam to the alien mothership, where he kills the leader. In the end, Barr hijacks the ship and uses its terraforming capabilities to convert Mars to Earth-like conditions, creating a viable candidate for colonization. An alternative end is shown if the player dies in the last level. In it, the aliens destroy Earth. The game solely consists of 3 levels: the living asteroid, the alien communication station, and the mothership, the corridors of which form a huge swastika. Creature Shock spans across 2 CDs and demands the player to swap discs from time to time. The player moves a cursor, which indicates walkable directions, the presence of enemies, and weak spots thereof. A shared supply of energy both powers the main weapon and a shield. If energy is depleted, the shield isn't working and the cadency of the gun is considerably reduced. Luckily, energy quickly replenishes over time. The key to win battles is to know when to use the shield and when to use the gun. Bigger enemies are just vulnerable at very specific spots, which are not always exposed. While exploring the mazes, level-specific random encounters with small enemies may occur. Typically, if the player fails to repel the attack, a bit of damage is caused before the enemy retreats again. An exception are worms that will eat the player if they aren't shot quick enough. The main enemies are located at specific places. The occurrence of these monsters sometimes depends on the order the rooms are visited. Combating the main enemies feels a lot like little boss fights. Alternatively to the occurrence of main enemies, at some places the player is assaulted by a group of attackers in a non-FMV gameplay segment. Throughout the mazes there are containers that might provide red spheres, which either grant a permanent energy update or restore full health. At the beginning of each level, the supply of energy is reset back to the default. A HUD at the right hand side of the screen zaps through a series of displays. Besides gauges for health and energy, there is a detector for enemy presence. It both indicates proximity to enemies, but also serves as an enemy life bar during fights. Always visible is a compass that simplifies navigation through the mazes. The compass readings can get erratic, however, if the player is near to an alien, and furthermore will pick up interferences at certain locations. If the player dies, a slew of situation-specific death scenes is shown. Afterwards, it can be seen how the conserved body of Bar is put into a museum of dead creatures. This museum is actually accessible in the game itself and can be visited in the last level. After dying, the current level is restarted. The CDI saves the progress onto the so-called Timekeeper, which is a non-volatile RAM chip with encapsulated coin cell. Usually, these cells are depleted and the consoles struggle to save settings. A common fix is to remove the old cell with a wire cutter, a drill, or an axial grinder, leaving the old contacts intact. Then a new battery tray is soldered to the pads, which allows the usage of replaceable batteries. If the user fails this operation, the old Timekeeper has to be extracted and exchanged for a substitute. The CDI PCB is very delicate and repeated soldering will damage it. Thus, it's a good idea to make use of a PCB socket so that future chip swaps are easier to do. Luckily, in the case of Creature Shock, there is also a level select sheet, which is a viable alternative for less technical people. A single person called Martin Piper was tasked with the port of the game. This work took more than 3 years, as for the high difference in performance between PC and CDI. For example, the CDI has much less virtual memory, and thus a cached compressed file system had to be developed for the game. It allowed to load in data while a stream of MPEG video was playing. Compared to the other versions of the game, the CDI port lacks interactive spaceship portions. To make up for it and to avoid plot holes, the CDI version features additional cutscenes. The assault portions of the game are much more static on the CDI, featuring fewer frames of animation and the fixed camera perspective, rather than a movable view. Furthermore, the CDI version lacks the background music that plays while exploring the mazes. This, however, helps to make the game more eerie and spooky, as the ambient noises were preserved. The advantage of the CDI port to the other console ports are the visuals. It's the only version that looks as good as the PC counterpart, whereas the other ports heavily compressed the videos which are played in the background of the game. This advantage comes with the caveat that Creature Shock requires the digital video card add-on in order to work. As all games that heavily rely on FMV and constantly read video, Creature Shock needs its CDs to be in perfect condition, else it will crash occasionally when reading fails. Personally, I like Creature Shock a lot. As a child I played Myst and later I enjoyed the D-series very much. Therefore, I'm not offended by the slow pace of the game and the clunky navigation. That the title took established adventure game elements and mixed it into a shooter was a welcomed surprise. Creature Shock looks gorgeous. The game feels like traversing a hostile body. I consider Creature Shock to be one of the standout titles of the CDI and would recommend it to any enthusiast of the system. I enjoy the cover of the game. It shows the alien that was captured in the first level as it intimidatingly stares at the player. The back gives a good glimpse of what the game has to offer. This is the end of the review. My name is Ben. I thank you for viewing.